Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. First, let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, the death announced tonight of music legend Ozzie Osbourne earns a front page lead story in The Sun with a picture of the heavy metal star with his wife Sharon and the headline, The Wonderful Wizard of Ozzie. The worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza leads the Express, picturing a starving child and the plea, for pity's sake, stop this now. The Guardian reports on the growing international outrage over the war in Gaza. The Mail claims that the relatives of British victims of the Air India crash have been sent the wrong remains in what the paper describes as a horrific bungle. According to the Telegraph, Essex police have admitted to escorting protesters demonstrating in support of migrants to the hotel in Epping, where migrants have controversially been housed. The ad reports on plans to give workers early access to money in their pension pots as part of a move to boost savings. The Metro leads with a study's findings that the COVID pandemic aged all of our brains, even those who were never infected, with the stress of isolating and not knowing when it might stop, both being major contributors. And the Financial Times reports that the estate of British tech entrepreneur Mike Lynch is to be declared bankrupt, despite being worth several £100 million because of outstanding debts to the computing firm Hewlett-Packard. And we're joined tonight by Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. Great to see you both. Lots of different kinds of stories. I suppose when it comes to pictures and, the story that broke in the evening, it is the death of Ozzie Osbourne. Let's look at the front page of The Sun. It kind of says it all. Great headline, Wonderful Wizard of Ozzie. And they're pictured with his wife, Sharon, who's credited with sort of recreating the second phase of his career. Sonia, I guess not everyone is a metal fan, but he was a hugely symbolic figure.
Absolutely. I mean, he was the godfather of heavy metal. A real kind of musical legend in the UK. He hailed from Birmingham. I mean, I think it's really striking that he gave his last performance before he died just 17 days previously. It was his farewell gig. It was in his home city of Birmingham at Villa Park Stadium. And, I think it's probably... He did have a lot of issues with his health. He'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's. He had various other health issues. But, he was performing less than 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So I think the news will come as a big shock to a lot of people, particularly heavy metal fans.
Yeah, but actually, Ali, I mean, the tributes were coming from everywhere, and even musicians like Sir Elton John, who's not a metal musician, but, he was just such a key part of the British music industry, though being global.
He was absolutely an icon of the heavy metal scene, clearly been around for decades. I grew up with Ozzie Osbourne and Black Sabbath. I was not a massive fan of the music, but he's an iconic, legendary figure. I mean, Elton John himself said he's a legend. The tributes are pouring in. And Sonia mentioned the concert at Villa Park where he was there and he sang a few songs. Black Sabbath were also there. Guns N' Roses were there as well, which just shows you the respect with which he was held. And I also think that Sharon Osbourne clearly had a big part in his career. People remember him very, very fondly, and he's an icon of the industry, and he also won multiple Grammys as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with Sharon is that actually I think a lot of, especially younger people, will know him from the TV show that they had with the whole family.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's sort of one of the things he was most famous for in the latter stages of his career. Massive reality TV show. It was nominated for lots of awards. As you said, Barbara, she was really credited with kind of reinventing him in the sort of second part of his career. And it was a relationship that, had huge ups and downs. They separated at one point. He was arrested for attempting to murder her, to strangle her while drunk. So, I mean, rocky feels like a bit of an understatement when it comes to describing their relationship, but they were reconciled. And, she had a huge, huge influence on his career as well.
We have just found out, Sonia and Ali as well, that the Lionesses are in the final again.
Yes, I mean, they've really kept us on the edge of the our seats of this tournament. So we had the quarter-final against Sweden, where it went to penalties, and England got through on penalties. And then we had this, where basically England equalised literally like 2 minutes to go of additional time. Then it went to extra time. And then, we saw England win on a penalty. So it was really, really nail-biting stuff. We don't know who they're going to face in the final on Sunday yet. Could be Germany, could be Spain, could be a rerun of the last Women's Euro final, which I was actually at Wembley at, where it was England versus Germany, and England took the trophy. So let's hope that happens again. But, I mean, it has been nail-biting. Yeah. It might not have been quite what Sabrina Wiegman wanted in terms of how they've got there, but they're through to the final.
They got there.
We'll take
and actually, no matter what happens in the final, they've made history, because I think it's the third consecutive final in major tournaments. So they're the first team to do that. It's the first English team, of course, to do this.
They're definitely showing the men how to do it. They are very successful. It has been very, very stressful, though. I mean, if you're an England football fan, it's been extremely stressful. The Swedish match was absolutely, nail-biting. I mean, the penalties were appalling, but they managed to find a way to win, and that's all that matters.
It is.
The result that matters.
It's all or nothing in football.
And tonight was another case of it. I mean, they leave it to the end, and they've done that before. But now they're through to a final, and let's hope they win.
Yeah, well, it's either Germany or Spain. They play tomorrow, and of course the final is Sunday, so we'll have to wait till then. But how exciting, anyway. OK, let's take a look at some of the other stories, somewhat less exciting, but still important. The Telegraph, front page. Ali, if you can start us off with this, and it's about the doctor strikes, and it does seem that they are going to go ahead at the end of the week.
They are going to go ahead, and the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is saying that junior doctors, now called resident doctors, are treating the country with complete disdain for patients. And I think that they need to be careful, the resident doctors, now, because they're asking for 29%, which they say is pay restoration. They've already had 22, 23% before.
It's like 28% over the last 3 years.
Which is when they came in. Streeting took a view that he wanted to get rid of this strike action because there's a 7.5 million waiting list. He wanted to get it done, which he did. And some people saw that as an element of weakness. And in fact, what they said at the time was, we're not going to strike again now because there's a new Labour government, it's really popular. We're going to wait tactically for about a year to go, and then we'll do it again. Now, I think people are going to see through this, and they're going to lose public support. The NHS is already on its knees, and now they're going to have to pay consultants huge fees to step up and actually cover for these strikes. So I think junior doctors, resident doctors, call it what you want, are in danger really of losing public support.
And also, Sonia, I mean, it's about money, but it could also be about working conditions, because that's another one of their issues.
Sure, but in fact, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has just put more on the table in terms of their working conditions. And they said, well, it's not really about working conditions, it's about our pay. We need our pay to go up. And I'm afraid I agree with Ali here. I just don't think they're asked are reasonable. I don't think they're proportionate. Quite frankly, if we were going to be increasing pay in the public sector, my first priority would be the very low paid in the public sector, including, for example, care workers who are on some of the lowest salaries in the public sector, and people in other jobs that are low paid in the public sector. Junior doctors have had a fair settlement from the government. They've used a different measure of inflation, not the official measure of inflation, to get to this extra demand for 30%. I just don't think it's reasonable. I think their strike is going to compromise the quality of patient care. I think it's going to lead to unsafe patient care for people who are going to have operations delayed by weeks or even months as a result. It's not reasonable, and I agree with Ali. I think they've lost a lot of public support.
And let's just see that headline in The Guardian, Wes Streeting condemning doctors as the word he uses is reckless for striking. So that's the line
it's
that the
5 days as well.
Yeah.
5 days. They're switching off their care from Friday to Wednesday. It's just not on.
Well, let's see if there is some movement, between now and Friday. OK, let's go to the Telegraph again. And Ali, this to you. So James Cleverly, back in the shadow cabinet.
Well, look, there's not exactly an abundance of talent in the Tory party, let's be honest, right? They've got about 120 MPs. James Cleverly, I've known him for many, many years. We were candidates together. He's a friend. Look, he's a competent guy. He's a decent guy, perhaps too decent and too nice, which is why he lost by 4 votes against Kemi Badenoch. So one of the things I think he's probably learned is to, push harder and make sure that his team can count properly. But he's a serious player. He's well-spoken, he performs well, and I think amongst the talent that the Tory party has, he's one of the biggest hitters they've got. I think it's important that he's come back. Now, it's very interesting that he's going to be in the local government and communities brief, facing off against Angela Rayner, who is one of the big beasts of the Labour government. She's a very, very great performer, and it'll be interesting to see them, the two of them, facing off against each other in the Commons. I think, in terms of the other movements that she's made, they haven't been earth-shattering, but she has brought back Bernard Jenkin as Vice Chair of Candidates, which is interesting. And Frances Maud is making a comeback in sort of running her office. So she's looking to some of the older hands, the wiser heads, to come back into the party as well.
Sonia, what do you make of it?
Well, I agree that it's interesting because you've got Angela Rayner, who's sort of talked up as a potential successor to Keir Starmer and, very popular within her own party, who will now be facing off against James Cleverly, also seen as potentially still a future Conservative leadership contender. It is interesting. I think it comes back down to this idea of it's always better to keep your challengers and those who threaten you close than far. And I do wonder, it's not great for Kemi Badenoch to have somebody like James Cleverly sort of twiddling their thumbs on the back benches. So I wonder if that's part of the logic as well. But I'm sure it's also fresh. She's not considered to be doing exceptionally well as a Conservative leader. So I'm sure it's part of trying to refresh her team.
Yes.
We'll see how it goes. OK, we don't have a lot of time. One last story to get in, front page of the Metro. The pandemic aged our brains, but not COVID itself. Sonia, start us off. Just explain what they actually mean.
So this is a very interesting study. It's an academic study based on scans of 1,000 people's brains before the pandemic and after the pandemic. So it was a study that was being done anyway. And what the findings are is that people aged on average 5.5 months more than they should have done their brains. Look, 5.5 months older than they otherwise would be after 2 years of the pandemic. And this happened, whether you contracted COVID or not. So it
was more like isolation?
Yes. Well, there's a couple of hypotheses. One is that possibly it's the impact of social restrictions. Second, and maybe isolation and loneliness. And the second is it's the uncertainty of not knowing when the pandemic will be over.
Look, I think we all aged during COVID, didn't we?